We are live. Woodstock TV. August 30th? Is that where we are tonight? And we have a real interesting guest with us tonight, all the way from England, across the pond here. And part of the family, you might say. And this is Woodstock TV. And I like to always give thanks and gratitude to Paula Gloria Barton for teching for us tonight. She hasn't been in the studio in a while, and it's a real gift to have her talents behind the scenes here. You're welcome. Charles Anson.
Hello.
And I'm close to your family, but this is the first time to meet you, and this is kind of an interesting situation because we're getting acquainted on camera.
Yeah.
You know,
as good a place as any.
You arrived 2 days ago, and I was busy working night and day, and finally we got to hang out today, and
we saw some.
And here we are live on TV. Yeah,
well, exactly. It's a very intense way to meet someone. During the day, you go to a waterfall up in Catskill.
Catskill, yeah. And
bathe in whatever 6 degrees centigrade water.
Yeah.
Then you come down and get into a studio and talk on a live show. So that's, this is I guess there are more chilled out and intimate ways of doing things, but this is
well, this is Woodstock, so this is about as chill out a studio that you'll ever find.
This is definitely chilled. So lovely. Well, it's great to be here, and I've been put on the spot since I got here. I mean, I arrived on Monday night, and my sister, who does some singing down at the Colony on Monday night, open mic, said why don't I join? And this was an hour and a half after I landed, feeling a bit jet lagged from London, but got straight to the Colony, got pushed onto the stage, piece of paper with some lyrics on it and some chords for the guy next to me, and we sang a song. It was a bit of a train wreck, but I
do that every Monday. I have train wrecks routinely there. So
I know.
Welcome.
There's nothing like a train wreck to warm yourself up and get yourself involved in the local community. So so I enjoyed that. Evidence on YouTube, I think, as well.
Just allowing things to flow here, I had not ever been to the falls today where we went, and so it was as new experience for me as it was for you. And I do these shows with photography stills and kind of talk with, like a slideshow, and that sometimes when I don't have a guest, I'll do that, and I'll take pictures of the region around here, animals, plants, whatever, and fungi and stuff, and today was really remarkable, and I was so taken by that, the upper falls there, the top of the falls in Catskill. It's off Route 23A, folks, in Palinville. And it looked like something from the out west to me, the what they call undercut, overhang like that. Yeah. And there was a certain kind of a theater, a stage-like feeling about it. Yeah. And I braved the water. I got in first, and I thought a million little tiny piranhas were biting me. It was so cold. It was just fabulously cold and clean.
Yeah, it was a glorious location. We was after, because I went in after because I thought, well, if he goes, I've got to go. I stripped off and went in, and then you come out and it just dries on your skin and it just vanishes. A lot of places you go in and the water sticks to you and dries and feels icky. In there it's just pure. And it it kind of tumbles down and it looks like it's in slow motion. This kind of glittering confetti sort of coming down from way up. And like you say, it's like a theatre. There's something very theatrical. It's like an amphitheatre. And of course, given my background, anything that feels like a theatre, I enjoy. So.
Yeah, you're right at home with it. Yeah. Performing arts, So I didn't know you sing.
Oh well, I did a musical actually once.
All right.
'Cause I do plays and mostly kind of TV theatre and a bit of film. But I did one musical which should have been first premiered in the States, but it was first tried out actually in London. It's called American Psycho. Yeah, it was done at the Almeida in London, and which is a really great kind of art production house for theatre. It was written by a couple of guys from out here, obviously, with Bret Easton Ellis's blessing, the guy who wrote it, who wrote the novel, and they tried it out on us, guinea pigs, in London. Went down quite well, but then they got a show done off Broadway with some real Americans. After that, we were just doing accents, I did what I could, I'm not great, but I try. So.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like one of my favorite things to do is falling into accents, and I'm not really very good at it, but I do it anyway at the movie theater. When I manage the movie theater, and so I'm always interacting with the public, and so you'll probably appreciate this one. So frequently, if depending on what candy they ask me for, I'll go into an accent. So if somebody asks me for a Junior Mints, I'll go into a bad German accent. Junior Mints, like this, this kind of thing. So
Camp Nazi style,
right? Yeah. So I mean, and the thing is different nationalities of people will come through. And and if I like a Polish family came through one night, and I started mimicking their accent, but it really wasn't intentional.
Yeah.
And after a fashion, there was some laughs, going on about it. Yeah. And I did the same with a German couple one night, and they got quite offended. And then some Brits came through, and they didn't even notice.
That's fine. Don't mention the wall. Just
Yeah. So I kind of got a chuckle about that. And I was like, well, okay, we are still the colonies.
Yeah.
But anyway,
just assimilate the culture as it comes. It comes. Yeah.
I have frequently visited in conversations on the show here, all different kinds of topics, all different kinds of topics, and one particular topic that actually interests Paula quite a bit is my father, and my family, and it's like who I am, how did I get here, and this kind of thing, and given that. I've become close to your family, and I've adopted you guys in a big way. I'm kind of compelled to make a few comments on what I feel, from your family. And see, I come from a big family.
Yeah.
And we're all like, artists and military and, everything from athletes to musicians and, and everything in between. So it's sort of a complicated group of people, and I'm at a stage in my life where many of them are dead now. Both my parents are gone, all my grandparents are gone, and what remaining siblings I have, there's a few of them are gone and one missing. I find that my sense of that past part of my family, what I come from, is living more and more in my mind, living more and more inside me, and the future of my people, which is my kids and my stepkids, are all growing up and having lives and families of their own. So I don't really get much of that either, and so when
stuck in the middle,
so I will sometimes tell stories about Michigan and my dad and the farm and grandpa and stuff like this, and our family was not we're not the closest bunch in the world.
No.
In fact, there's a lot of estrangement and a lot of almost, I guess you could say, dichotomy within our family, and we're all intellectually acute people. We're all very, very smart people. But there is a thing where we don't call, we don't write, we fall away over time. My sister is keeping in touch with me a little bit. We kind of found each other and reconnected over Facebook.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
But in your family, mom and dad are involved and caring, and you know, I find
they're divorced, but they're a strong couple.
Yeah,
it's a contradiction in itself, in a way.
Well, you know, that actually happens a lot.
Really,
it does.
I thought they were totally unique. I've never seen it happen outside my family.
Well, no, I've seen it here in the States with a couple of my friends, where friendly divorces and in the end living together or helping each other.
Cohabiting divorces.
Even so
cohabiting couple. Okay.
But the gift that I see in the Anson clan is I don't know, I guess a bond of love, you know, that I didn't really see in my family.
Well, it's interesting to the perspective you get from outside, because there definitely is a strong bond, but we're a diaspora, I guess. You know, we're spread all over. Well, there's only 5 of us. It's a very small diaspora, but no, but we spend a lot of time apart. You know, we're in France, Switzerland, the UK, the US.
Yeah.
Even my 2 sisters, who are both in New York State, they've had times on and off. Sometimes seeing more of each other, sometimes less. Sometimes on the same wavelength, sometimes not. Same with my parents, and I guess, there is a strong link, but I guess where it connects with you is that you say that things kind of fall apart over time. There's no form, there's no deliberate contact. There's sometimes, we don't have rituals the way some families stick to doing certain things on Sundays or at Christmas or whatever it is. We have no respect for ritual, really, which in a way is healthy. It just makes us kind of impulsive and human. We just do whatever feels right at the time. But I certainly look at other families with envy who do have a certain degree of ritual and things that some people in the family want to stick to, and kind of a schedule to the year and things that can't go missing in the way you interact with each other and the habits that you have with each other. And I guess we've had quite an unconventional journey with my parents, getting on better now that they're divorced than when they were married. That involved some unconventionality, and certainly my sisters had to escape that in their teenage years. They had to escape home to find some air, really, because it was a stifling environment to be a teenager in. I escaped. I was a kid when my parents were together. I didn't suffer from it as much as a teenager would, because you're not living the same struggles and the same rebellions. You're just getting on with it. By the time I became a teenager, I was just living with my mum. So
I think there's a time element here. But what the quality that I was kind of examining here is that Sophie gets in trouble in some way, and she's on the phone with Laura immediately. I mean, it's always, there's like a certain kind of a backbone that Laura has for Sophie in light of a lot of things we won't go into here. But what I'm saying, there's a loyalty and availability that you as a family, share that my family just simply doesn't. It just I kind of like think about historically the wealth that this family famously lost from generation to generation. For many generations, I used to yell at my brothers and yell at my mom and dad and say, why can't we be like the Italians? We're such smart people. We have all these talents, and all we do is fail with like holding our estates together and stuff. Because of laziness in one fashion. I don't mean to go on about it, but it's kind of an interesting story. My mom's side, her grandfather was a senator in New York.
Yeah.
And they had a fair amount of property in a place called Rockland County, not far from New York City. And some 2,000 acres and such, a big farm, and there was 11 kids. And of that 11 kids was my grandmother. and Grandma Gertie was in that mix. She was one of the older half of that bunch of 11 kids. And she shared with me what happened to that estate, because I used to walk past it going to school all the time. And the family legend was that was once one of our, places where my mom grew up.
Yeah.
And what happened was in the 1920s, since, the parents died, and you had 11 people managing that property, and nobody wanted to pay the taxes. And we lost what today would be worth $500 million. I mean, crazy, amount of real estate value is gone in 2 generations.
Yeah.
And it was because of laziness and sibling rivalry. And on the Conant side of things, that's the Higgins side of things. On the Conant side, my dad's side of the family, similarly, we had a farm in Michigan, and 160 years in the family, and in my generation, we lost it because of an insult. Yeah. My brother Joe was a rank of colonel in the Air Force. My dad was ranked colonel in the military, in the regular army, and Dad had been drinking as a challenge alcoholic because of the shock of war. I mean, this guy had 35 years in the field of real war, from pulling Indian duty on horseback in the last unmechanized cavalry unit to Vietnam. Yeah. So I forgive my dad for the drinking that he did, which was really painful for us kids. But where I was going with that is that, Joe wouldn't show him the base, officer to officer, man to man, father to son, because he was ashamed of my dad's drinking. Yeah. And he wrote us all out of the will and left it to his second wife when he died, and she promptly died 2 years later after leaving it to the neighbors that we had been fighting a feud with for 100 years. Yeah. So, and this blows my mind. This is country. This is country living. I mean, does this happen like in Wales and stuff? I mean, this kind of thing. I mean, have you ever heard of this before?
Yeah, you definitely hear of family feuds, but I suppose that in this country everything feels like it happens on a more epic, larger scale. Families are larger. I don't know. It's
well, the Irish Catholics now.
Yeah, well, I don't know anything about Irish Catholics.
Well, there was 11 English of them on my mom's side.
We're Protestant. We're Protestant. Twos make twos make twos.
Yeah.
No, that's obviously that's on quite an epic scale. I guess with us, there is a loyalty there, but I suppose my only regret with it, because it's been, it's wonderful to have that as you've described it. I guess between my sisters and that they always have each other. I've always been on the receiving end of that loyalty as the youngest in the family.
Yeah.
I suppose my only regret is that I'm not a port of call for them quite as much, they expect me to come to them with my problems, not the other way around. So I'm to a certain degree sheltered from all this.
That's a curious thing. Yeah, I know. Okay, we're both the youngest.
Yeah. Well,
I was the last of the litter in my family.
Yeah. Certainly the same.
And but it was different because I was so much younger than my youngest older brother, 7 years my senior. My sister was 3.5 years, so my closest sibling was my sister, and that distance in age almost put me in this realm of I don't want to say only child, but I was definitely different.
Yeah.
I was the chore. I was a bother. They all had to take turns babysitting George, and that interrupted their flow as teenagers and such. Yeah. But I also had a great education because it was the 60s and 70s. And my family, with my parents being pillars of society, like my mother was, working her way up in the Department of Mental Hygiene of New York State, and my father was a career officer in the military. and the Vietnam War, civil rights, drugs, everything just exploded in my family. Between the straights and the hippies, and between the, pro-Vietnam, anti-Vietnam, or whatever it was. I mean, it was all there, and I got to be in the cat seat, sort of watching our culture on the micro scale, exhibiting everything that we were watching on the news. Yeah. And I don't know why I'm talking about it. It just seems kind of interesting that you're not exactly a generation after me, but you're sort of a generation after me. You guys are like, 10 years, 10, 15 years my junior. So that was the 70s, 80s. Yeah. And did you, Laura often mentions, Africa. And does Africa figure big in your life as the youngest?
That was my father who was born in Kenya. Yeah, they called it Kenya back then. I think it's Kenyatta who changed the pronunciation to sound like his name or something. Right, President of Kenya. But anyway, no, his father was a farmer, so obviously a white imperial British farmer at the time when it's after the empire was dying out. It's after the Second World War. Just after that, the Brits were just losing their colonies overseas and having to kind of cut deals to retain influence, but hand over autonomy. And and there were actually the Mau Mau were the freedom fighters or the terrorists, as depending on which side you're looking at from. Yeah, sure. Who were trying to push out the white British occupants at the time, of which my grandfather was one. They would say from their perspective that they were just doing the community the local economy a service and a fair, and they were working fairly, employing fairly. But of course, this was a result of empire. This was this influence that white people had at the top echelons of Kenyan society, and it was frowned upon. The Mau Mau and other political groups in Kenya wanted the Brits to go, and this was when my dad was just 3. My uncle was 6. And rather than leave them on the farm where the kids were the first to be picked on, sure. by these people, it was a high risk environment. So he was sent off to school very, very young, to first within Kenya and then outside back in the UK. So he was sent away from home very, very young. So certainly the back and forth between Britain and Kenya was something that would have featured highly in his memories and his life. I've been back since. I went there once 10 years ago to climb Mount Kenya. Go with a friend. It took 3 days up, 3 days down. It's a big. That's an undertaking. It's quite a thing. I got altitude sickness on the way up, and I was very worried that I was going to have to give up, but I slept it off and took rehydration pills. And
I was just going to say, drink lots of water.
Drink lots of water, rehydrate, wrap up because it gets very, very cold, and then you do a push for the summit where you get up at 2, 3 in the morning. You have to go. You have to get a few hours sleep. Because the idea is that you do 4 or 5 hours walking for the push to the top before the sun comes up. And there was a group of 5, 6 of us. There was me and my friend John Paul who did this together. There was another couple. He proposed to her when they got to the top and the sun came up, and that was very nice. So I thought, kind of well done him. and it's an incredible place because from there, it's not like being in the Alps, because I grew up we grew up when I was a kid. We were in Switzerland and France in the Alps, and there there are mountains all around. There's everything. It's like some places around here, I guess. Adirondacks and all that we might visit.
Sure.
Very mountainous areas.
I hope we get to go soon. Yeah.
But so you're used to everything being mountainous and imposing and being surrounded by mountains, which is something I really miss now living in the UK. Everything's flat as a pancake, and you don't know which way's north, south, and east and west, and it really gets on my nerves that sometimes.
Really?
Yeah. It's just no perspective. That's why I moved to the sea, because at least with the sea, you know where the sea is, and you know which way you're heading. You know, in London, it's just, it's disorienting. So anyway, when you're up Mount Kenya, just because it's a volcano, it's not part of a mountain range. It's there's nothing around it. It's just a cone in the middle of an enormous plain.
Wow.
So when you get up there, you really use the curve of the earth is almost, it's just you're you can it's an incredibly it's mind-blowing. You just all around you, you're just kind of aware of this gigantic planet you're on.
Is it one of the planet's largest volcanic mountains?
Well, I guess it's like, iconic ones. I guess Fuji in Japan, and
I mean, so for you to get altitude sickness, you must have pushed.
Oh
6,
yeah,
10,000
it's about 5,500 meters. So whatever that is, 15,000 feet, 16,000 feet.
That's a serious mountain.
Yeah.
That's from
Kilimanjaro. I think it's higher than Kilimanjaro, which is the big famous one that a lot of people do in Tanzania, not far from there as well. And Mount Kenya is they're similar sort of height, similar sort of idea, and it's stunning because you start off, and the variety of environments that you go through. You start off in this temperate subtropical environment where there are baboons kind of running around, sort of, and there are leopards and there are elephants, and you're walking through the forest, and it's quite trepidating because a lot of these animals are dangerous. You have a guide telling you how to avoid
getting eaten.
Elephants, particularly, actually. Yeah, the ones that eat you are, they're more worrying at night. So you just, you kind of try to protect yourselves from that at night. But the buffalo and the elephants are the ones that you want to stay out of the way of. There was a herd of elephants crossing our path in the forest once with a baby, and those are the ones that you really. That you stay away from. So we had to wait for a couple of hours for them to just move on, and then we could go. But yeah, then you go up through this astonishing vegetation. You're so high that you go through all these kind of plateaus of different vegetation, and then at the top you're in the snow.
I was just going to ask about that snowfields.
Yeah. You're in the snowfields at the top. I was freezing my ass off, and I felt very stupid because I'd lent a pair of extra socks to my friend John Paul because he'd forgotten to bring them along. But turns out he was a lot braver with the cold than I was. So I had to ask him to give me my second pair of socks back. I remember at the top of the mountain, I was like, no, you give me those back to me, please. You look fine. I want to put those on my feet. So he's never let me live that down. Actually, he reminds me all the time. Yeah, so that was a very that definitely had an impact on me in a long-winded way to answer your question of the impact that Africa might have had on me. It's a little one, but mainly my dad. Me, it was a wonderful travel.
I wasn't. You see, I'm not sure because I don't have a whole lot of information.
No. With me, it was my sisters, older than me, grew up in. They started out in Beirut in the Middle East, and that would have been something quite astonishing because my dad was a reporter. He went through many stages in his career.
Right.
For Reuters, out in Beirut, when there was a lot of strife in the late 70s between Christians and Muslims, and it was kind of a hot spot. And then they moved to the ever peaceful Geneva. Swiss area. Well, that was where I spent my childhood, so sheltered from all things warlike.
So were you also? So you also grew up in the castle that I've heard about.
It's not a.
That's
where we started out
for catching the rainwater. and such.
That was it. Wasn't a castle.
It wasn't a castle.
They call it a chateau in French, which does actually in some context translate to castle. It actually means more like something like mansion. And my parents rented this place because it was quite dilapidated, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was a beautiful place, but it was one of those places that you have to be willing to take on for the style of it. You know, if you want to be comfortable, you get yourself a nice comfy flat in Geneva. For the same price as that, you might get a 2-bedroom flat in Geneva. My parents being, the kind of people they were, my mum was an artist, and they thought the kind of the challenge and the romance of this place was just too compelling to not to do. So they rented it until the owners sold it to someone who could do it up. And so I spent the first few years of my life there. We had hornets' nests in the attic and various other kind of challenges.
Sure.
But one of the most wonderful features that I remember about it is this swing that my dad installed, because it was on this hillside, and in front of it there was a wall which just gave which kind of tumbled into the valley in front of it. So the views were incredible. And there were, just in front of this wall, tall trees that would grow up level with the house. Mm-hmm. My dad attached a swing to one of these trees so that you could just get onto the swing if you were, an irresponsible adult. You could get onto one of it, certainly not a child, but if you were him, you would get onto this swing and swing sort of, 40 meters into the void and back again. And he would do this. And there's footage of it. But it was, my dad liked doing things which slightly death-defying exercises. I think it was something he enjoyed. He once, this is a story I was told, but God, I'm talking a lot about my dad. I hope he doesn't see this. I think this was in the States actually, when he went out swimming in the sea, when all the kind of the signs do not swim,
right,
you will die. Yeah. You will die. Rip do this at your peril. Yeah. They were out there. Those are like a red rag to a bull to him. So he went out. The Coast Guard went to save him because he was drowning, and pulled him back, and then didn't beat him to a pulp, but gave him gave him quite a stern reprimand. That since he had endangered not only his own life but also the Coast Guard's life, who came to rescue him. Anyway, my dad likes doing that sort of thing. I haven't really inherited that gene. I think I'm a lot more risk averse when it comes to physical challenges. Yeah. Maybe not career challenges. I think there's an opposition there. I think my dad was more conservative with his career, but like the physical challenges, whereas I take it easier on the ski slopes and climbing steep hills. And I won't swing from trees quite as energetically as he will, but I will launch myself into careers where I don't know what I'm doing 2 days from now. So that's just the way it is.
That's any career these days. I mean, I think this is a philosophical bent of mine, is that there is no security. The security is in here. I mean, I've of all of my siblings, well, I shouldn't say that. Some have had a harder road than I have, but I've had a pretty hard road, and it's by choice. I made choices that my best friend in high school, that I had a rock and roll band. We still play music 40 years later, right? Glenn's like in IT, and he was in military, and he had all kinds of capabilities in cyber security. So he worked for Goldman Sachs. I mean, he's worked for all the time. He works for the world's top accounting firm, KPMG, I think. Yeah. Right. So, and this is again IT security. So, but he makes the big bucks, and he works really hard, and he had a quadruple bypass operation, and there's a price that you pay for that. That kind of level of income and responsibility. And my problems are different, but I don't have those kinds of stresses. He's back and forth to Amsterdam all the time and this kind of thing. So, but anything can happen. He wasn't expecting to have a massive heart attack. And having kids, they have problems, and so to me it's a trade-off. I'm an artist, I'm a musician, I do carpentry and construction, and manage a movie theater, you know,
No.
and sometimes work isn't happening. If the economy takes a dip,
Yeah.
and then everybody's holding on to their money, their houses just rot. Well, that's good for me in the future, but for right now, you know, I need a house that's rotten I can fix, you know, and nobody's spending money. So that can happen to me.
Yeah.
And has, and right now I'm not in that situation. I got more work than I can actually handle. So what I think I'm getting at is that you're doing something you love.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a powerful thing.
Yeah. No,
and,
it is. It's true.
and you know, like, I do oil painting. I hope you get to see some of my oil. I gotta get them out of the shed anyway. I show you some of my oil paintings and stuff. And but you know, this creative thing in my hands, you know, it didn't make me money with fine art.
Yeah.
And when I was in the School of Visual Arts, they said, well, if you want to make money, you go to the commercial art department. If you want to suffer, you know, you go over to the fine art department. Yeah. And it's kind of the way, unless you have a patron, you know, we're back to the Middle Ages with the art scene, really, in that sense. So, life is really quite a trip.
Yeah. And like you say, the security you have is in your head. You know, the
Can you say that again?
Mentality.
Say that again to a camera.
Well, because the security you have is in your head.
Thank you.
It's all in your head. No, the sense of and some people, I guess, like unpredictability more than others, because there's a difference between security and predictability. You know, you can have a job which is predictable, but you're not completely secure. You might, you have to fight to maintain your position and to justify your work or to justify your position within the job that you have on a constant
and
basis.
There's always somebody trying to cut you under.
Yeah. So you might know that, you might know the kind of the framework in which you're going to operate if things go well 3 months ahead. You know, you might know the office that you're going to turn up at and more or less what you're going to be up to. But you're never going to be completely secure about your position. There's a predictability, but not a complete security. Whereas, I suppose I have neither. But there's I suppose in what I do, there's a security in that I keep fingers in different pies. I do, a variety of different forms of drama. I guess, theatre, TV, film, voiceover, commercials, audiobooks. You have to do a bit of everything. And the idea is, over time, you get just about enough of everything, and it's like kind of throwing sand in the air, and different bits fall in different places. They don't all land in one place. So you have to kind of have faith that across time there will be those stepping stones that enable you to get by on, like you say, doing what you love. So so far so good. So far it's been all right. It's not been easy, but it's been all right.
Well, I don't think it's. If life were easy, it's not about easy.
No, you don't want it to be easy because I guess When
let me throw this out at you. As you know, your sister, better probably than I do, but I know her pretty well.
Yeah,
and. We sometimes spar over these kinds of subjects.
Well, I can't imagine.
and I have a very, very, very different philosophy of business and money. Mm-hmm. Just as an example.
Yeah.
And I took issue, with this thought of being broke, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, what do you mean broke? Well, you don't have 6 figures in a bank account. And I'm like, so you think because, I run close to the red line, with money, that I'm Spartan, that I'm broke because I don't have a lot of money, because that could solve a lot of problems if I had a lot of money. Yeah, you're broke. And I said, no, I'm not broke. I'm capable. So this is not long ago we were having this tete-a-tete. I said, I think differently about it.
Yeah.
I said, to me, I've lived on mountainsides with 4 kids, 2 of them babies, 2 horses, 2 dogs, 6 chickens, a fence line, in tents, in the Adirondacks, walking around the perimeter with my rifle because a mountain lion was sizing up my kids for dinner at 3 in the morning. I said, and I had to go and work for $5 an hour because in the Adirondacks there was no money.
Yeah.
I took the worst work because that was what the new kid in town does because all the local guys got the good work. And that's the way it always is in the Catskills, Adirondacks, go to Vermont, anywhere. When you're the outsider, you got to start right at the bottom, right? And I said, I've pulled off things, that my exes could not believe, how do you find these places to put the horses? How do you do this? How do you do that? It's because I'm capable.
Yeah.
No. I'm not, when somebody uses the broke word, to me that means broken.
Yeah. No. It's effectively, it's the idea of someone being broke is I think is a product of in modern times a culture of debt. Often, people getting into problems because they face a huge amount of financial debt, and you get poor people in debt, ending to having to face significant issues. I think it's Charles Dickens who said that a happy man is one who earns 11 shillings and spends 10, and the unhappy one is the one who earns 9 and spends 10, so it's a very fine line. The idea being that there's no such thing is poverty isn't defined by how little or how much you earn. It's just how you manage the world in which you operate. And if you have a certain degree of self-sufficiency, like what you described there, if you're in an environment where you have the control, you have control over the kind of the means and the processes by which you live. Even if you don't see any money at all, you can feel perfectly at ease and wealthy and well off because you are operating within a framework where you produce your own means of living. And if however you are dependent on an economy where you don't know how to make things or how to do things or how to produce your own value, and you're forced into debt because society will force the weaker people into debt and make the richer people profit from that. That's where you will feel poor, and you will feel sort of enslaved and broke, probably, because like you say, broke and broken. They go hand in hand as ideas. So it's not about amount of money in the bank account. It's, because I'm similar, come on, as the artist lifestyle is you're flirting with the zero on a constant basis. Kind of bouncing up and down off there. And just what I try to do as much as possible is to avoid, is just simply to just tighten the belt when I need to and just avoid debt as much as possible. Some of it is unavoidable to an extent, but I guess that's where the real kind of enslavement and the real poverty begins, is when you're in a system where you're just falling further and further into that servitude that debt represents, I guess. So yeah.
I guess you know what, you can almost you've articulated some very important thoughts there, and I share those thoughts with you actually, but it's almost as though there's different kinds of debt, and that's kind of one of the things that I'm looking at, like right now, and that is like I've crossed the line. No. I bought a new truck. No. With credit. No. And this is a real issue, Yeah. And not so much now, but when I made this maneuver, but I was looking at numbers, I was crunching numbers, and it's like I just spent 7 years on these 2 old trucks. Now I'm a good mechanic, and I did a lot of work myself, and I paid for some work, and I did a lot of parts, a lot of money in parts. $37,000 in 6 years to keep these trucks going. And a lot of that figured into that is time lost climbing under and fixing stuff. And welding things back together and stuff like that. And it's great that I can do that, but that's not making me money in that moment. That's like wasting time, not wasting time, but it's occupying time, right? Maybe I'm making value because I'm making the truck go another 100,000 miles or whatever, but it was killing me, right? So I looked at that and I said, that's a new truck. $37,000 in 7 years. That's a new truck.
Yeah.
And I got a wild hair, and I just said, I'm going to go shop. I'm going to look. I'm going to go find it. I know what I want. I know where I'm going to, so I went to a dealer. What do you want, a dealer? Went to a dealer, and I said, this is what I want. I want bare bones. I don't want anything special. I want the best deal I can get. And, well, we have this over here. I said, fine, then I'll take it. Well, you want to test drive it? No, I know what a new truck is.
Yeah.
It was the easiest deal they ever made. It was the easiest sale they ever had. And with
say I want a truck like Bill McCann?
no, I didn't. He's our town supervisor.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Okay, there's a dig there.
You're putting your truck in green screen.
We should. I should take some pictures of it. Anyway, the thing is that I wanted a GMC, but I ended up with a Chevy. It's basically the same thing, but the Chevy is a little less expensive.
Okay.
But the point is that now I don't have that burden of wondering if my brake lines are going to blow when I have a full load of wood coming down a hill in Kingston. I've had that happen. Fortunately, I know how to drive in those conditions, but most people would crash into the vehicle in front of them or something, right? So all those stresses are gone, and at the end of the day, my monthly is under $700, and that includes bumper-to-bumper insurance for anything that goes wrong with the vehicle, except for brakes and tires.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, there's some worries that you can do without.
And I don't even know what my engine looks like. I don't change the oil. I don't touch it. I don't do anything.
Yeah.
And and if I want to take Laura to the mountains, or you and Laura up to the mountains, we can just go in. I don't have to check the oil. I don't have to open the hood. Yeah. We can just clean the car out, pull the tools, and go.
Yeah.
And that is such a relief
That's
on my brain. Yeah. And the thing is when I like I said, when I made that decision, I saw that I can't beat that with these old vehicles at this point, with the high miles and the destruction that they have, and I took good care of them, and I got a lot of work out of them, but they were old when I got them. Yeah. So now they're just dangerous because of just the fact of metal fatigue. Yeah. Anyway, I don't mean to be banging on about the truck, but the thing is that kind of debt, which was a strategic debt. Is putting me deeper and deeper into the black in my bank account.
No, there's obviously strategic debt can be very important. Obviously, in most situations, the debt is just that. I mean, obviously these financial products are all designed to make the bank richer. So
that's most of them.
So that's what they're there for. It's an extraordinary thing when you take on a mortgage like the one I've taken on in Britain. You realise that for absolutely no work at all, for about a couple of hours of administrative work carried out by the bank auditing me to see if I could afford to pay back the interest that they want me to pay back, they're going to get tens of thousands of pounds, if not, probably about 100,000 over my lifetime, in interest for a couple of hours' work, evaluating whether or not I can take this big wodge of money off them and then pay it back plus that 100,000. I mean, it's extraordinary that we think in our society that is an acceptable thing, that we can hand over this cash effectively, for free, because it's the only thing that we can do, because without it, I have no house. Right. And obviously, in a sense, I was yippee, over the moon when I got my mortgage. I just thought, this is great, because I'm self-employed and I managed to bag me a mortgage. But it's unbelievable that we accept this, this interest-based system, where we're handing over so much value through hard work, through sweat and graft and blood and tears, to bankers who've done nothing for it. But thank you, bankers, anyway, because otherwise I wouldn't have afforded my house. it's such a bizarre, contradiction there, isn't it? There's such a kind of a clash of thoughts and an absurdity.
It's a creation of law. It's a creation of an artificial economy. When I love studying ancient culture, ancient history, and ancient economies, and everything that we're doing today is nothing new. I mean, you go back to the Romans. Yeah. Or even Samaria, and if you look at the financial records of these civilizations, you're going to see many of the same patterns that we're doing today. So this is nothing new. Yeah. And I started to exercise my mind. I like to do a lot of thought experiment. And one thought experiment that I was doing was one day I just started thinking, okay, Conant, let's think about money for a minute here. All right. Now, money was invented why? Well, as a medium of exchange, so that you could buy this for that, and across borders, whether it's the Silk Road or whatever it is, right? This medium of exchange that sort of interpolated with the barter system, the system of barter and trade, which is kind of a real natural system of economy. Right, okay, I got a couple of bushels extra of corn here, and you got some deer hides. I can work a deal, right? And the honesty of that deal, the integrity is a lot harder to violate because you're dealing with the real object in question. Now, the guy could put a couple of rocks at the bottom of his bushel of oats. No. And that kind of thing, make it heavier, whatever. Yes, barter and trade can still be violated and made unfair, right, to one of the other parties.
But it's always going to be, as soon as you invent money, you make it unfair in a way, because you're bringing in, because you're bringing in a means by which you can accumulate wealth and this kind of theoretical buying power, which money is. So, right. I mean, I'm no economist, but it's. But obviously the basic, like the illustration you gave, the oats and the fish and the cloth and whatever, you can barter it, you can exchange it. That's just that's a natural basic economy in which you just exchange good for goods. Right. But if you can accumulate wealth in the form of money, which you
can buy and move mountains, literally. So here's what I did in my mind. Well, actually, I even wrote it out. When I started going, is let's talk about all the honest things you can do with money. And, there's like a list of 10 things or so. And then I went, well, how about all the dishonest things you can do with money? And the list was like, I wasn't even done. And it was like maybe 30 or 40 things. You can embezzle, you can hoard, you can steal it. Yeah. There's so many things you can do with money that are unethical, right? That it just made it really clear to me. I said, okay, money's a problem. Yeah. It has the kings and queens and merchant barons of antiquity knew that when they invented money and got people to use it, that they had leverage and that they could amass power artificially by simply amassing money by whatever means. And that was alarming to me when I really thought that through, just exactly how alarming of a civilization that we are living in today that is debt-based, as you say. So we've gone from money to subtraction of life energy as a medium of exchange, through the credit card. Yeah. It's an incredible advancement or retardation of our civilization. I mean, where is this going to end? Where does this go? I'm not,
Well, we've got to start the Communist People's Republic of America, and we've got to start it now.
Well, I don't know. The communists are pretty into their money.
Forgo money,
yeah,
people.
Right? You have a thought, Paula?
Yeah, I wanted to say to Charles, did you know that when you get a mortgage out, you're the undisclosed third-party creditor?
Undisclosed.
What does that even mean?
Third-party creditor.
Right.
Yeah. No, I didn't know that.
It's an interesting. It's kind of, George, like when you go into court and you're fighting somebody that doesn't even have an affidavit of truth and fact sworn to under oath.
I see.
You're the only one animating it. It hit me as you guys were speaking. You're the undisclosed third-party creditor. In other words, the system, the way it is predicting how much you're worth over a lifetime.
Yeah.
And they're extending the credit, but the credit has been extended in the form of a fictitious corporate entity set up with exactly your name, but in all capital letters. And I bet you could explain that to him, George.
Oh, well, yeah.
In your last 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, we can run a little late. I mean, we don't have to be precisely at 8:00. I mean, unless you're
time's flown.
Yeah,
well, I don't know.
I told you.
This has become an economics convention. It's
Well, we talk about anything here. This is live TV, and this is free speech.
Yeah.
This is something we have here. We can say anything we want.
Oh, wonderful! Of course.
And
well,
Paula, what were you setting me up for there? Where were you going with that thought? Now,
Well, you made really good progress in court with the abatement for misnomer. I don't know if you formally did it that way.
I didn't.
But you used some of those concepts.
Yes, I did use some of those concepts, and it made them very unhappy. A few things that I've done made them the powers that be unhappy, which was calling a duck that none of my paperwork had been challenged, and that I'm not talking about the current thing that we're dealing with. Right from the beginning.
No, sure. This is
I started attacking the criminal thing right away with as a third party with a cease and desist, saying there's fraud upon the court and this kind of thing, and as time as it evolved. I had to learn that, okay, this is a system of procedures. Yeah. And the procedures, when they are following the law, theoretically are correct and will bring remedy to an error or a crime.
Yeah.
Right?
Called due process.
Due process. But when you have a situation where the error is in the procedure, then you have things like color of law, operating under the color of law. It purports to be lawful, but it isn't. So say an arrest is made, but there's no evidence. So it's a false arrest. It's fraud. Basically, with the things that were starting to percolate to the surface because I was pointing at them, really are all variations of fraud. And fraud in its kind of rudimentary sense or definition is that which deceives. Honest interaction. Yeah. So if it's deceiving, whatever it is deceiving an honest exchange, so that exchange can no longer be honest, is fraud, and there's intention involved as well. See, so fraud is intentional. It's an intent to deceive and carry out that deception. But moving in the direction that Paula was prodding me, there's this thing, where we are all born as flesh and blood creatures. So you're real. And interestingly enough, the basis of our constitutional law here in the United States is common law rooted in the UK. That's our common law. All comes from across the pond. But that common law has been superseded by commercial courts, commercial law, maritime law. Okay? The trade law is what is being foisted upon the American people. Corporate law. Superseding or operating, I don't want to say in lieu of, but sort of shoving the common law out the window, which is our right, and creating what they call a fictitious entity out of the flesh and blood person. through a birth certificate, through a driver's license, through any contract with the state, which is a fictitious corporate entity, a creature of a corporate nature. It's not a living creature. It's a dead creature.
It's animated through consent.
And it's animated through one's consent. All right, so this is kind of taking you to a weird place, I know, but what I'm trying to explain to is that when you consent to the corporate courts, and you say, well, they say, are you George Conant? And I say, well, is that all capital letters? Yeah, it's capital letters. Well, no, I'm not George Conant. I'm not those capital letters. My name is spelled this way, and I'm a flesh and blood man. And what you're doing is you're telling the commercial court, you're a commercial court, and this is a corporate fiction, and I am a real person. We can't hear each other, so they don't have jurisdiction over me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's yeah,
and so that's kind of where she was, and so in identifying myself and in this case, Laura, as real people in these and not corporate fictions, really was very upsetting to the court because this is kind of information that the general public doesn't know.
Well, what I find quite surprising is how in modern law and society, you have corporate entities and individual entities, people being considered, on almost an equal kind of conceptual footing, but by the law. So you get kind of moral persons and physical persons.
Yes.
And what is interesting is that morally, obviously, these entities don't behave in the same way because morally, an individual physical flesh and blood person has a moral existence that unless they're a psychopath, they abide by, and there's a common form of existence that we all share, and there are rules, tacit rules, that we kind of all embrace about how we should.
Conduct
ourselves and behave towards each other, whatever our education and background and so on. But yeah, no, it's very interesting because it's a form of perversion really that an entity that can a corporate entity that can behave essentially in a psychopathic way because it can behave without a moral conscience.
Well,
in fact, what often happens in corporate organizations is that it's inhabited by individuals, people who do have a moral conscience, but in a way, the decisions, the actions that are made by that corporate entity that are carried out by people, the moral content of the actions that are carried out, is sort of diffused throughout that corporate entity, so that they're not owned by any particular individual; they're just owned by this imaginary creation, and so there it's a sort of it's a license for immorality, on the part.
Boy, you're really hitting some things very precisely.
But that's a different.
Here. No, it's not different. This is exactly what we're talking about. I don't mean to interrupt you, but as this thing progressed, one of the things that I've learned is the corporate entity, these corporate fictions, and how these corporate courts rope you in as a flesh and blood person into their system. Is they make me the CEO of George Conant. So now I am the responsible party for the corporate fiction. And if I say guilty or not guilty, I have consented to that contract. It's all contracts.
You consent to putting yourself in an arena where you can't possibly compete with those other people that effectively that are the fictitious
closed union shop.
Fictitious
right
people, so it's a system that invites you to compete on a footing where you can't compete, because it invites you to compare yourself to a fictional super powerful.
Which is really interesting because in my situation right now, my adversary and opponent who has taken action against me in the courts for, I think $500,000 for, slandering her is the claim. And so I responded when I was summoned. You get served papers. You've been required to respond to this charge, right? And so I responded with an affidavit of truth and fact as to what actually happened, and under the pain and penalty of perjury. And the opposing team didn't like it. And so I asked for 60 days to resubmit and rewrite it, rather than just let this lawyer move to have my paperwork thrown out, which they did. So I got my 60 days. I reformatted. I made it more concise. I made it, I formatted it more the way this complaining lawyer from the other side, wanted it. So I thought I was doing, all right, and so I resubmitted it, and they still didn't like it because I was telling my affidavit of truth and fact of what happened and how I saw it happen, and the circumstances leading up to various events that led to my writing this email that went to the police, it went to our customers, and it went to the local editor, because this is happening in our town, and bad things were being said about myself and Laura. And so as this progressed in the civil, the opposing lawyer demanded that my paperwork be summarily thrown out. But concomitantly with that, I put into that second submission of affidavit of truth and fact a statement at the end. If this is not rebutted in 30 days with an affidavit of truth and fact from the accuser, it stands as fact on the record. That's it right there, black and white. They had it for 30 days. On day 45, I submitted a demand for default. All right, so here's notice of default, demand for default judgment. And they got very upset and responded immediately in 12 hours. I got an email from the opposing side and the judge. And so the problem that they now have, though, is that they have never put in, they being the lawyer representing the accusing party, an affidavit of truth and fact. Not even at the beginning, nothing, just complaining and making a lot of smoke and noise, but no substantive accounting in an affidavit of truth and fact sworn to under the pain and penalty of perjury, as I have done not once but twice. No rebuttal. And the judge has agreed to summarily throw out all my paperwork so that I have no argument. This is a kangaroo court. How can this be? No. The only problem is that I don't consent, and that's the problem that they're having with me, is I'm not consenting. I'm not consenting to the fraud, because you see, I've informed all of the parties that there's fraud going on here, and therefore any judgment here is void. Yeah. So it's going to be an interesting next few weeks. Yeah. For all the parties involved. I demanded that the judge recuse himself for throwing my paperwork out, because that's a violation of due process and my rights to equal protection and due process. And this becomes now my basis for a federal submission to a federal judge that has been appraised of the situation over the months and years now at this point. Yeah. And
God, has it been years?
It's been years. Yeah, it's 2 years now. So the learning curve of dealing with creatures of the law and how lawyers and judges have commandeered the common law and put it into the context under the color of law, under the color of any law, a commercial court. Now, these commercial courts are supposed to issue traffic tickets. These commercial courts are supposed to settle trade disputes, things of that nature, corporate issues. Now, a corporate court doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad one. if it exercises the procedure lawfully. And what may be lawful and what may be legal are two different animals, because legality isn't necessarily lawful. And the law comes back to the common law, and the common law is the bedrock of our Constitution.
Yeah.
So this is a real snake eating its tail situation. But the only way you can get through it is to parse through it and to stand your ground.
Yeah, what they're not used to is individuals who study and reflect. So you know, and who don't, you know, defer to other authorities to look to the defense of their own rights. I guess people, you know, consume their way in normal society, in standard society today.
Yeah.
You know, they consume their way through the defense of their own interests in the court of law, you know, by paying a lawyer, by you know, trying to purchase themselves a good deal, you know, you know, I guess it's unusual for someone to take on their own case as it were.
It's becoming less and less unusual in this country.
Yeah, and you can understand why it would be, you know, because in various individuals present, you know, various frameworks and interpretation of the bedrock, as you call it, that sort of that fundamental law, and so obviously it's not a streamlined, comfortable way for you know, for judges and the powers that be to operate. You know, if empowered individuals come into the arena with their own truth. Yeah.
See,
so it is uncomfortable, but you're up against some formidable powers, and that's the trouble is, you know, power does corrupt and twist and, you know, and present a considerable challenge, whatever your knowledge and logic and integrity. So I, you know, I hope that, anyway, I hope that the rightful and the just and all that you know, prevail in this. But it is a hope. I'm not you know, we can't for all our ideals be naive and expect good to prevail. We have to hope.
Well, yeah, I'm a long-term. Paula, you got an idea?
Yeah, I'm just so inspired by this show, and I wanted to say to Charles, I think that the problem is corruption and honesty. It's not that the system is wrong. It's not that it's wrong to have corporate fictions. The wrong is that when you have shareholders hiding or hidden, you know, they're either consciously hiding or they're hidden by portfolio managers who are then doing this cheating thing with this third party, so that a judge would, an honest judge, would welcome the argument that George is bringing forward.
Yeah.
Because when the common law emerges, the common law is stunning. The common law is what's withstood the test of time. The common law has, that's why it's common law. It's you know, it's not that the temptation to cheating is a recent modern event with the fraud on the internet and so on. It's just that we're seeing it so rampant because the technology allows it. But once people wise up and understand the power of their consent, it can be cleaned up very quickly. My husband uses a very simple example. He says the vacuum cleaner that's been sucking all the equity out of our civilization can be turned on blow. And if it's turned on blow, you put it all back again. And that's what I think in this country we have the old westerns. And you've got the guy saying, "Oh, we're going to clean up this town." Yeah. I think that's what this is all about. It's a recurring theme.
Well, this is also, you know, to plug, you know, free speech and reaching our audience this way in public access. You know, this is an important tool. Public access. This is actually the inception of it. At least here in the States, it has been as a demand that the airwaves, which are public, the right of the people to have a voice to counter what the mainstream media or the media in general, the press, will not cover. So as TV producers in the tradition of free speech and freedom of the press, I do these shows, and a lot of them are very friendly and benign kind of little shows that are feel-good shows, because I'm sure there's audience. Part of my audience, doesn't get out in nature and see the beauty that's around, in the woods, and I like to kind of bring that to people that are homebound. I think about those people, that there are old people, that there are sick people, there are, those are the TV watchers, many of them,
Yep.
So there's that. But then on the other side, there's also informing our community of what's going on. And I've stumbled into this situation having to deal with the machinery of the judicial machinery and the police machinery, and it is a machine. They call it that themselves in their own documentation.
Yeah.
It's called judicial machinery. And understanding what a machine is does not have feelings.
No.
You can't make a judge like you. He's not supposed to like you. He's a machine. He is cutting justice.
Yeah. But also, machine has such connotations, especially if you're in a society that's accustomed to, I don't know, if you're in a farming society, for example, a machine is something that harvests, cuts up, shreds, and takes the nutritious kernel and throws away shreds and bits of hay. And so a machine, in that sense, conjures up. It's about the concept rather than saying a system or a framework or an instrument. It definitely conjures up something quite vivid to say machine.
So we've covered a lot of territory here.
We certainly have, yeah.
You really have to wrap it up. It's such a good show.
We need a burger, don't we?
Let's see.
Well,
How long have you been in Woodstock,
I think we've had
Charles?
a good run. We can come back for another
Well,
after
hang
our
on a
burger. You see, I romanticize. I love American cuisine. It's something I fantasize about when I'm across
Really?
the pond. I just look forward to my stacks of pancakes, my burgers, my my bacon and eggs. I mean, it's something that you guys take for granted. I want to stop by the road and get myself a milkshake. You guys don't think of this because you have it on your doorstep all the time. But we romanticize this.
How often have you
It's
been?
hedonism.
How often
Sorry?
have you been to the States?
Last time was 10 years ago.
10. You haven't
this
been
is
for
the
10
biggest,
years?
This is the biggest break I've had since the first time I came when I was 10, I guess. So for some reasons or another. I mean, I work and then family, having kids, various things have got in the way. But yeah, I'm just very, very happy to be
Where
here.
do you usually live? I didn't catch that.
I live in Kent, in England. I lived in London for 7 years, and I've just moved out to Ramsgate in Kent. It's a town by the sea. We live right on the seaside. You can see France from our house, just
Wow.
over the other side.
I'm going to go visit.
He's going to come visit.
I definitely have to go visit.
and
My
you should all come
ancestral
visit.
home is in a place called Budleigh, I think in
Where?
Devon.
Devon, okay. Devon's beautiful.
And that's
That's on the south
family.
coast,
The
yeah.
family crest is in the church there, and on the family pew, which is very interesting because my family history is really interesting.
Yeah.
In the 1500s, the explorers that came to this continent was one of them was a neighbor, the son, John Conant's son. And his name was Roger William, okay? And John Conant was next door neighbors to Sir Walter Raleigh.
All right.
And,
okay.
you must know that name, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so they were landowners, next to each other, and they were rivals, friendly rivals. So Sir Walter Raleigh put up an expedition to Virginia, and John put up an expedition through his son to Cape Ann, which founded the Massachusetts Bay Colony
Right. Yeah.
in 1626. And anyway, the thing is that on the pew in the church in Devon is not the coat of arms, but a figure of a Algonquin chief's head
Really?
Wow.
carved
really.
into the wood, going back to 1630
That's
or something.
extraordinary. Have you been to visit? Have you seen
No,
this
but
stuff?
I have letters from ancestors from
Right.
the 1800s
Right,
imploring that we all go and see it.
Well, you must. You
Well,
must. You must
you're-
come to
you're
Ramsgate
kidding.
and then travel down
No,
to
I'm
Devon.
not kidding.
You're saying that the Algonquin signage is over in England? I thought
On
they
my
were,
family pew,
I thought
on the
that's
side
a-
of the pew.
I thought
Yeah.
it's an Indian tribe.
It is an Indian tribe.
Yeah, they brought back.
So how did that happen?
Because I suspect because Roger William must have had to marry the chief's daughter to keep the peace during the formative time.
Wow. Wow.
So when he went back, he went back as a member of the Algonquin nation.
Well, did you know Abigail Storm was related to Pocahontas and also British royalty?
Not
so
surprising,
maybe,
yeah.
So it seems similar to what you're saying. How interesting.
Well, those early years, they didn't bring many women on ships because you didn't. Women didn't go on ships.
Yeah.
And the ones that did died in childbirth when they got here. So frequently the colonial element had to find their mates among the native population.
Well, apparently when Pocahontas came back, she was very elegantly received as a princess in her own right,
Sure.
and
So
with all the demeanor and bearing.
we're going to wrap it up. And I'd like to thank everybody for watching Conant Show. This is 47 shows here now. And if you're interested in public access, everybody, you can mention it to the town council that we need some new equipment in here. And that would be really swell if we get some TLC in the studio here so we can put out a better product for y'all to watch. And thank you for watching the Conant Show, and we're signing off. And thank you, Charles
Thank you. It's
Anson,
been a pleasure.
for chatting with me and making a show with us. And thank you again, Paula, for chiming in and doing the teching.
Thank you.